Ladies and gents, welcome to the 2 Cents Podcast. I am Brand, and this is episode 36 of Reader's Digest. Unfortunately, Armand is not with us tonight. Hopefully, he may be checking in with us later. But I have a very special guest on the line with us. Before I even introduce this brother, I just want to do just some quick updates and housekeeping. Just want everybody to definitely keep checking out the episode, check out the podcast. We have links on SoundCloud at the 2 Cents Pod. Check out the Twitter page at Cents Not Cents, that's $cents. And check out our Facebook page, which is 2 Cents to Speakeasy. And we definitely plan to have a website coming up pretty soon, just to kind of encapsulate all the episodes and information in one place on the internet. So we appreciate all the listeners. Like I said, man, we started this from the bottom. We're just babies. And, we have our own careers, but we just like to, shed a little creativity and passion in these topics that we do. So I'm going to shut on up, man. And I just want to introduce one of our very most prominent guests, man. This guy, he's an alumnus of my high school, Abington High School. He's a Willow Hill Hawk, my elementary school. And, this guy, man, is like a heavy advocate for education. And he's doing major things over there in the left coast, from Philly to San Diego, man. We got Mr. David Thompson. How you feeling, sir?
Yo, I'm good, Brad. How you feeling?
Great, man. Great. Honor to have you on, brother.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate this.
Oh, man. Absolutely, man. And, when we do these podcasts, sometimes getting everybody together is a little difficult. And especially with you being in San Diego, as soon as you said, I'm ready, I'm like, all right, cool. So am I. You know what I mean? So before we begin, man, just want to, give the folks a little background on yourself, man, before we even, begin.
Yo, all right. Well, my name is David Thompson. I live out here in San Diego, California, and I'm a college counselor at the Bishop School, which is it's an independent school for grades 6 through 12. And a lot of my work is really trying to connect kids with the things that they like to do, and being able to see exactly what could be a potential future for them and help them with their application preparation, and really trying to push them to think for themselves about what it means to be educated, think about what it means to want a future. So that's where I am now. I graduated from Lehigh University, had a degree in psychology, and then spent a good number of years doing different work within the field of education. Started out with a nonprofit working for the Boys and Girls Club, doing some after-school programming for gang-affiliated and adjudicated youth. Had 2 different positions within the field of college admission at Lehigh University, and again at Swarthmore College before coming out here. So I appreciate you letting me be on this podcast with you, and let's roll.
Nice, man, nice. Hey, we definitely got to do a part 2 with Armand, because he loves this type of thing, and you just putting your foot in the education field as you do, man. We definitely got to do a part 2, man. But so I just want to give everybody a little story really quick. David and I, after high school, we relationships become strained a little bit, and we linked back up maybe like 2008, and every time we get together, man, we have like radical, revolutionary education conversations. And
just trying to change the world.
Always, every day, man, every day. And I never forget, man, we were talking about books, and at the end of our conversation, maybe like 2 weeks later, I look in the mail and I see a book, and it's like a brief little letter. You know what I mean? It had a few words, and it was initial DT, and I was like, man, I was racking my brain like for a couple of days, and I was like, it was Dave. Dave sent this to me, and I'm looking at the book right now, and for the listeners, the book is titled "A Hope in the Unseen," and right now it remains a resource for me when I work with my kids and my young teens. And it's a great story about, just a black kid from an inner city who eventually made it his way into an Ivy League institution. So I just wanted to give you that quick shout out, man.
Hey, thanks, bro.
Appreciate that.
Well, it's funny. You would ask me, just giving a little heads up on the chat today. You would ask me to think of some of my favorite books, and I got a little list running. But at the very top is A Hope in the Unseen, and it is a story that I love to share with people. In fact, I was trying to find my copy of it. I probably bought this book about 4 or 5 times, and still cannot find the copy, so I'm pretty sure that most recently I handed it off to someone and I just said, read this, and I never worried about getting it back because I wanted it to be in their hands. But it is a powerful book.
Absolutely, man. It took me a while to kind of, get through it, but it's an excellent read, excellent resource, inspirational type of book. So let's start off with our first issue of criteria, man. So, being as we both work in the realm of education, and we both had experience working with youth in the Black community and other populations as well. Dave, I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on the basic impact that reading has on education, and then I want to spin that back on the impact that it has on the Black community.
Nah, man, I appreciate that. I think when I look at this, reading and education, we've got generations of young people who turn away from books. And, and I think I struggle a lot of times with trying to figure out why that is. But then I also remember that I, too, was a young person who turned away from books. Because there's really something about trying to connect what you've been through to what you read. And if we're not putting the right books in the hands of our children, that's going to be regardless of race or socioeconomic background. If we're not figuring out how to put the right books in these young people's hands, what are they going to connect to? I kind of laughingly reflect back on my time with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I didn't know a single thing about anything that was going on. Maybe like 15th century Europe, 16th century. That's not my thing. But there's nothing there that I could relate to, and so I really struggled to get through that because what I hadn't appreciated at the time I was introduced to Shakespeare and some other authors was the beauty of the language that they used. And so rather than appreciating the beauty of the language, I was just trying to understand the language.
Right.
And that. Right now even I'll talk with students who they're reading something in an English class and they just don't connect with the topic. And so instead of trying to figure out how to connect with the topic, they just run off. I don't know what you experienced, man. What is that like for you in your school? Yeah,
that's a good point. I think the topics they're just not meaty enough, and when I mean meaty, I mean that they're not gripped with enough reality and passion, and especially when you're talking about kids in the urban setting or just kids in a minority setting. You know what I mean? And let's be honest, a lot of stuff is culturally biased, and so it's one thing that's to stick Moby Dick in a kid's hand who's been reading that type of thing, and it's another thing to stick that type of book in some kid where he's been reading slam magazines. And that's the only thing he can tell you that he's read.
Right.
So I think
I would have been so happy if we had an entire 4th grade class on Goosebumps books.
Oh,
that's
man.
the thing that I connected with at the time.
Oh man, absolutely, and
right.
and something like Goosebumps immediately reaches out to you, and it pulls from a place that is really unfamiliar to all. It doesn't pull from some culturally ranked area. It's just a wide open imaginary world. You know what I mean? So I was definitely a fan of R.L. Stein with those Goosebumps books, man. Totally.
But so it's interesting too because I think about I don't know if you ever really thought about the characters of the books that you were reading when you were growing up. I don't know how many listeners did. I know I didn't actively think about it, but when I reflect, I recognize that there were a ton of books that were placed in my hands that had characters that I couldn't connect with. And I realize now as I get older and I think about this when I'm working with folks, I think about this, that it's important that you see yourself in the characters of the stories that we read. You know, and I jumped back. One of my favorite books as a child was Corduroy. Remember Corduroy?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, well, one of the things about that I absolutely love was that the characters, and I think this is probably why this book was put in my hands by my parents, is that the characters, I mean, we're talking like a little black girl living in the city, really just trying to create a gift for herself that she can love. And I think when we're young, we very much connect with the idea of wanting to not only be loved, but wanting to love something else. And the fact that the characters in that, the little girl and her mother, look like me, that meant something. Because when I look at some of the other stories from our youth, I mean, to be a little black boy, not only were we not, at least I wasn't, surrounded by a ton of stories with predominantly black characters, but then when we were, the characters that were black weren't necessarily positive.
Mm-hmm.
And
or had a rough time.
We have. Go ahead.
Or those characters were having a rough time.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to identify with a rough time, you're not going to let that be the sole representation of who you see in literature that looks like you.
Right. I agree.
You know, so I don't know if you're familiar with Kwame Alexander, but Kwame's an author. Writes young adult children's books, and about 2 weeks ago put an article out on New York Times, did a book review, and the title of this was Kwame Alexander on Children's Books and the Color of Characters. And I think we see predominantly white schools with stories that star predominantly white characters, and those kids are able to connect, right? You can kind of have this conversation because you don't have to break through the barrier of who the characters are, or how the characters connect to you before you begin to appreciate the language.
Right.
So Kwame Alexander, when he writes his stories, the character's race and background is never fully revealed because his basic truth is that it doesn't matter. We don't need to characterize people and characters in our stories by their race in order for a young person to connect. And so suddenly the books get a little bit more popular. They're a little bit more well known.
Right.
And I mean, we're talking to a man who's worked with students from all over the globe. And in this article, he even asks or mentions that people ask him all the time, well, what race was so-and-so? And I think we got to do what we need to do in order to keep students connected with the characters and the stories.
I agree, man. To kind of spin it back, I'll take the first shot at this one. On just the impact that reading has on education as a whole, and then I'll let you follow up. Man, I think it's like it's an approach to the emotional side of human beings as well as the intellectual. It soothes the soul. I mean, reading is essentially the first tool, that a young child uses to manifestate every single working ability in that human being's body. It's directly connected to motor control, sensory control, and then as you mature, emotional control. So I think, the importance of reading is so major, and not just, reading magazines or glancing at something on the internet. Actually taking a book, reading to your child reading independently, you as an adult just reading, to yourself. I think that is the single most impactful skill that we can utilize here on this earth, man.
And you're so right. And yeah, I kind of laughed. I realized that I kind of got misdirected over there, but I just get excited. I think, Greg, you speak to a really powerful truth about the maturity that comes from reading. Being able to use your imagination, right? It is a chance for you to be able to kind of envision a world that you don't know. Because we're always going, I think young people are faced constantly with realities that they've yet to experience. And if you can't envision